Now that we've gone through the full add, commit, and push sequence shown here, add, commit, push, let's practice that sequence again by adding a README file, as suggested by GitHub. Recall that if you look at the repository here, it says, help people interested in this repository understand your project by adding a README. So there's a way to do this through the web, but we're going to practice doing this at the command line and using a text editor. The idea behind a README file is that the name of the file literally tells people to read me. And in the Unix tradition, README files are typically used to describe something about the project, perhaps with an indication of how to contribute to it, and so on. It's probably influenced by a scene in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. There's a moment where Alice encounters a bottle labeled "Drink Me." And Alice's Adventures in Wonderland has had a big impact on computer culture, on nerd and geek culture in general. So it's likely that the name README in this context is influenced by the Drink Me bottle here. In any case, let's make a file called README. And we're going to use Markdown, so we'll use a file called readme.md to indicate the kind of file. The convention is to use all caps like this. And then we do MD. And as usual, Adam will now know to syntax highlight this properly. You can see down here that it detects GitHub Markdown. In fact, GitHub adds some extra things to Markdown. That won't actually affect us right now, but it's useful to know that there are some extensions that GitHub uses. And the default here in Adam is to use GitHub Markdown. As you may recall, if you follow Learn Enough Text Editor to be dangerous, Markdown is a human-readable format that is easy to convert to HTML. So we'll start off with the top-level heading. Let's call it Sample Website. And this will be converted to an H1, like this here, this H1. So in Markdown, the way you write an H1 is just with this hash symbol. And then we'll type in the paragraph. Now, when I do this kind of editing in Atom, I like to have the previewer running. So let me show you how to do that. This was covered in Learn Enough Text Editor to be dangerous. So there's a toggle, I forget the keyboard command, there it is. Control-Shift-M, so I'm just going to practice that. So just to remind you here, this caret character is Control, this is Shift, and this is M. So I'm going to do Control-Shift-M. And that's going to put in this preview here, and let me expand this out. And now I'll type in the README file. This is a sample website made as part of, and then I'm going to link to Learn Enough Get to be dangerous. And the way to make a link in Markdown, as you may recall, is to use square brackets like this for the link text. And in this case, I want to italicize the name of the tutorial, which you do with asterisks in Markdown. And you can see over here in the preview that it's italicized. And then I can put in the URL. And you can see over here that now the brackets are gone and it's a slightly different font weight. It's a little bit bolder, indicating that it's a link. And if I hover over it, I actually get the underline. So this is a sample website made as part of Learn Enough Get to be dangerous. And it's possibly the greatest beginner Git tutorial in the history of the universe. Not definitely, but probably. And let's put in some links to the tutorial. You should totally check it out, and I'm going to link the text check it out to the tutorial again. In fact, I can copy this. And let's put a link to the email list. And maybe put a link to the Learn Enough Twitter account. And let's say on Twitter for some context. And let's put one more paragraph here indicating what happens after you finish the tutorial. After finishing learn enough Git to be dangerous, you'll know enough Git to be dangerous. Dangerous should be italicized in this context. You can see over here, it shows up italicized. And what that means is so these are the main things. You can track your changes, back up data, share your work with others, and collaborate with programmers and other users of Git. Save that. All right, so this README is done now. Let's commit it and push it up to GitHub. Let's look at our status. You can see that the README file is untracked. Remember from our sequence that if it's untracked or unstaged, we have to add. Now, if it's just unstaged, which is to say that the file already exists in the repository, then we can do the add and commit step together with git commit-am. But what happens here if we do that? You can see it says here, untracked files, nothing added to commit, but untracked files present. So here Git is warning us that if we do git commit-am, that nothing happens. In fact, if we run git log, we can see that that commit didn't go through. So there was nothing to commit, so Git didn't make a commit. The last commit here is the one to add HTML structure. This means that we have to use git add explicitly, not just the -a flag to git commit. And you might recall that we can add the file just by itself, but it's so common to want to add files that I usually just do git add -a. It's very rare that you'll want to add one file, but not the other one. So this is a good habit, just git add -a for all. You can see here now the changes to be committed include the new file. And so now we can make our commit again. I can just up arrow here. By the way, at this point, since we've already added the README to the staging area, that's here, it's now staged for a commit. We can actually omit the -a here. We can just do git commit-m. This is what we did the first time we made a commit. But in fact, it does no harm. Since it's already added, this does nothing. So I often include an A just out of a habit. This is almost always what I type when I make a git commit. So you can go either way on this one. Just show you that it does nothing. It does no harm. Add a README file. And now we're ready for the final step. You might recall that before we had to do several things when we did a push. It was git push -u, blah, 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 a bunch of stuff. But after setting that up, you can just do this. So we see here in the diagram, git push. So it's nice and simple. And this will automatically push up to the remote origin, which is GitHub in this case. And we'll see the effect in a moment. All right, so that push went through. If we switch over to our repository here and refresh, there it is. There's our sample website README. Oops, and I just noticed that the name of the Learn Enough Twitter account is misspelled right here. The link is right, but the actual username here is missing an N. So let's fix that. This is actually a good example of how to fix something and then re-push it up and refresh it and see the change. Okay, so we want to add the N learn enough. There you go. Save it. And we can say fix a typo. And let's check it out. And there it is. It's already fixed. It's generally a good idea to have a README for every project, so typically I recommend, after doing the initial push up to a remote repository, adding a README just as we have here.